In this video, we're going to look at the Empower scoring tools. And before we get into building all of this, just to give you a lay of the land, we've got our scoring tab selected here, and we can see our tools across the top. And then we've got our workspace below. And the workspace here has our students off to the left, and we can toggle those with this toggle. And then we've got some standards that we've pre-selected, and we can toggle through the different standards that we've selected with this toggle. And those are the things that we're going to set up together today. And then we'll see how we can give scores using these buttons over here. And then we're also going to flip over to look at not just summative scoring, which is what this particular page is about, but we could flip this switch and look at these students and these standards and the evidence that's associated with these standards and give out evidence scores. And we'll do that towards the end of the video. Let's toggle and set this up as if it was the first time ever logging in. And we may have groups here that come across from our SIS. And the first time we log in, we may see some groups here. Anytime in the future that we log in, we're going to see the groups that we've pre-created, and we can either delete or edit those. But we're going to pretend again as if this is our first time logging in, and we're prompted here to select this symbol to create a new group. So let's do that together. Pretty straightforward. We're going to give our group a name. We'll call this 6th period Spanish. And we can give the group a description if we'd like. We're going to go ahead and skip down and give a focus area. And what you're going to see here is that this just helps Empower to save you a couple clicks in the future by knowing what it is you're focusing on with this group. Now watch the start dates and end dates. This is what's going to cause this gradebook to be selectable in your dropdown. Once this end date passes, then you're going to have to roll back your Empower clock to be able to see this group. It's not going to disappear, but it's not going to be visible immediately, and that's a common problem. So make sure that you're watching these start dates and end dates. You could add group leaders here. These group leaders will be able to see the class, work with the same activities that you're assigning here, and interact with the class just like you will. You can start typing their name and see the stakeholders, and we can pick a teacher that we want to co-teach with, and I can always just X that person off as well. Do we want others to be able to find and join our group? You may or may not want to do this. This just allows students to be able to search using their magnifying glass and join the group. So if you're offering a certain class and the students are free to diagnose their own need and find a class that meets that need, then this is a good option for you. And finally, the last piece of telescoping here is, would we like to select learners to add to our group? Yes. It's going to open up and we're going to get to see any of the sites that we have the ability to work with depending on our roles at the different schools. And whichever sites I select, it's going to generate a list of students who are possibly going to be in my class. I could filter this down by grades or classes that already exist. Maybe I want to make a subgroup of a class that I already have a roster for. But I can just select the students that I want and I send them over with the caret. Some shortcuts, I can also hold Control and select different students and I send them over with the caret. Or I can hold Shift and select a range of students and send them over. Additionally, the double carets will send everything from one column out to the other, so I can completely clear this with my double carets. And we'll just pick a smattering of students here, send them over, and our group is ready. We're going to hit save. Now back at my scoring screen, I see that I've got my 6th period Spanish selectable as a group I can work with. When we select that, we're prompted to select or create a new gradebook. Since this is a new class, we'll need to create a new gradebook. Very simply, what creating a gradebook in this case means is we're selecting the standards from our target browser that we want to score these students on. All of our target browser tools are here, including the keyword searches, hashtag searches, course selections. We can overlay our different classes in their area of need. I can get in to look at the scoring guide for these standards. And for a more in-depth look at the target browser tools and the options here, see the video that specifically deals with the target browser. In this case, we're here just to find the standards that we want and select those checkboxes. I can select an entire strand by clicking a box like this if I'd like. And I pick as many of these as I'd like. And when I'm ready, This gradebook will already be assigned to the class that I'm working with automatically, but I might want to share it with my colleagues in the same way that we would with an activity or a playlist. Or I might want to use this gradebook on other classes as well. I've got another Spanish class here, so I'm going to go ahead and select that class as well. And finally, don't forget to give your gradebook a title. We'll call this Spanish 2. And when we're all done, all we have to do is hit the X. And so now what I get to see is I get to see the students that I've selected and the standards that I've selected. I've made a really customized pared down gradebook. We can see the standard titles across the top. And if I mouse over any of these cells, I get to see the description of this standard. That'll give me a little bit more information. But if I want to go even deeper, I can go to the top of the column here. And we cover the detailed learning target analysis page in a different video about student needs, which is also where you could find out more information about how we come to these summative decisions. And I'd advise you not to miss that video. We are kind of blowing past some of that right now, just to look at simply how we enter scores, but to look at how we determine scores, make sure that you see that video. I want to show here the Learning Target file cabinet. This is a place where I can see a lot more details for this standard. And I want to highlight here the Scoring Guide tab, which is where I get a chance to look at the descriptions for every level of learning, if my district has included that in the curriculum. We've broken this learning out, and I can see what does it mean to get a 3, how will I know if a student is at a 3.5, and again, there's a lot more data that can go into these decisions, but here we at least get to see the descriptions at the different levels of learning. Once I've made those final decisions and I want to give out scores, it's easy. I come up to my toolbar. The date that's here is today's date, and this is the date that these scores are going to have stamped on them. I can change that date if I'd like to give scores that appear to be given at an earlier date or a later date. I can include a comment here. So any comment that I make now, any score that I give is going to have this comment included. And then I just select which kind of score I'm giving out. And I've got that comment, that date, and this score loaded onto my pointer, kind of like a artist's brush that I've mixed colors on, and all I have to do is paint scores wherever I want them. And I can even paint over existing scores. And Power is going to keep an historical record of the different scores that have been given here, so we can have a good look at the student's progress through this learning. If I want to delete any scores, I've got my trash can here, and I can always do that. If there are scores painted on top of other scores, we'll kind of excavate those and we'll get to see the score that is beneath. The cartoon bubble tool here gives me a chance to edit that score a little bit that I've just given, change it if I want to change the score, if I want to change the comment, or if I want to change the date, and I can save that. The history tool brings up the student's digital learning portfolio for this standard. This is one place where we can see their progress, their history through this standard. We see the rubrics, we see a progress chart. In this case, this student doesn't have any previous progress. And we can look at any evidences that they may have turned in for this standard, which again, in this case, the student hasn't turned any evidence. If they had, it would be seen here. And finally, if you prefer, we've now included a 10 key button by popular demand. So if I toggle this on, I can select a cell and enter scores using my keypad. What we've seen up to this point is the bare minimum that a teacher needs to know and be able to do in order to print a standards-based report card. I could flip to my reporting tab right now and run a standards-based report card with the summative grades that I've given. However, I promised you that we were going to flip this toggle, and let's take a quick look at how we enter evidence scores. Before I do that, let me switch to a class that I know has some data. This class that we just created won't have any evidences yet, and I want you to see what it looks like with some information in it. So I just toggled, picked a new set of students and a new set of gradebooks, and I'm going to go and switch over to my score evidence gradebook. And now instead of seeing overall standards scores, I'm seeing across the top here the names of different activities or quizzes that I've worked on with my class. Now if these are entered in our instruction tab, which we'll get into in another video, they're automatically going to be here in Empower, and I'll see them here in my evidence gradebook. In this video, I'm going to show you how to enter a quick evidence. Maybe something students did with paper and pencil and I want to get the scores into the system. Maybe it's quick observations that I want to make without making a robust activity around it. So let's go ahead and do that. I've got my Add Evidence button here, and we're just quickly able to enter in a quick name. This is an ELA class, so let's call this poetry reading. Again, watch the assign and the due dates there. Make sure that that's how you want it to be. And I go to Add Gradebook Standards. Empower already understands which standards I'm working with these students, so it's giving me choices among those that are in this gradebook. And I can pick one or more of these. And after that, the last thing I need to do, if I want to, is set each standard to a maximum achievable score. This is the goal score that we're aiming for students. By default, it's going to be set to proficient, but I can change that. Maybe we're only aiming at a certain level of rigor here on this standard, and so I'm not expecting students to get that. Later on, when we're assessing student need, we'll see that we're able to see that a student got a 2 on this standard, but that doesn't mean that they underperformed because that was the highest level that we were aiming for. And if I want to delete any of these standards, all I have to do is hit the X and it disappears. Now once this standard is set up how I want it, I hit Save and Close. Empower is going to take me back to my gradebook screen, and it's going to put this activity front and center. Now you'll notice here that this activity is aligned to 2 different learning targets. This gives me the ability to celebrate students' achievement and their strengths, and also be able to focus on their points of need. So I might walk around with my tablet and give out observation scores as I listen to students read poetry. When I want all of my activities to appear again, I can clear this filter. That is, don't filter out all of the rest of the activities. And if I want to sort out these standards, I can easily just select some filters and I can sort on all sorts of things, whether that's due date or activity name or certain standards, anything like that. And that's scoring in Empower. Be sure to check out our other videos for things like instruction and reporting and lots of other great tools that Empower offers. And we'll see you there.